Hey guys, welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates III. And I think today's guest has heard me say that a few hundred times. Isn't that right, McKlane?
That's right.
So, McKlane actually is the person who he embarrassed me at an event one time. I was standing next to one of my heroes in the real estate investing space. We're going to leave the name out. And McKlane came up and bumped that person out of the way and said, "Excuse me, I have to take a picture with RJ Bates. I'm his biggest fan. I listened to his podcast on my way to my W-2." And so we took a picture, and I was like, "But bro, this guy does more than me. Like, you need to take a picture with him." McKlane's like, "No, man, you're the guy." So this has been a long time coming because back then, McKlane, we're going to get into your story, but that was the thing, right? You were in a W-2.
Yep.
You wanted to get into real estate. Now you've got a 7-figure business. I love it, man. So break it down for the people, man. When was that? How many years ago was that?
Oh my word. Okay, so that'd be that's early 2019 because I closed my first deal in July. So for the listeners that are listening, whatnot, I actually listened to RJ's voice for like 4 or 5 months, and I told my wife, because we live like 2 hours away. I said, "Look, I've got to meet RJ. Like, I've got to touch him and like embrace him to get this." But every morning, I would literally listen to every episode from the Titanium Vault, and I'd have an hour and a half drive home, and I'm like, "Okay, if this guy can do it," and there was a podcast that you did, and I'm sure the listeners have heard it too, is like your team goes, "I was a warrior for you today."
Yeah.
And every day I'd tell myself that, like, I'm getting chills right now talking about that. But for months, I was like, you know what? Because I'm naturally an introvert. And like, whenever I first met RJ, I was scared to death. And I was like, he puts on his pants just like I do. Just go say hi to him, network. Um, I don't think you know, but I actually took like 100 business cards to that event. I came back with 98. So
That's awesome.
I really networked at that event. But
Yeah.
your podcast is what started for me to go, hey, if he did it, if he went through all those challenges, like, there's a possibility for me to do this.
That's awesome, man. And the thing about this is I'm at like the 6.5 year mark. This is the first time that I've gotten someone on here like you that's like, dude, the podcast is what really started this, because that was the first content that I ever put out, right?
Yeah.
Was the podcast. It wasn't these seller calls and all these lives and everything like that. That's where my content started. And the whole reason why I did it is for people like you. I wanted to give back to the community that changed my life and be like, hey, real estate investing can be that game changer for you. So you were working at W-2. Like, was it a good W-2 or was it a miserable W-2? Because I know there's two different.
Yeah. So about the time I was listening to your stuff, I had just got started in like any kind of wholesaling. I'd actually paid for one of the big name gurus. I paid for one of their courses, but I was working debt collection, making like $7.25 an hour, like 1% commission. It was awful. I was probably the only guy under 30 that had no assault charges, hadn't been married twice. And I learned my sales there, and I got into medical device sales. And that's where I was like, okay, because medical device sales, the product we were selling was end of life. It was oxygen concentrators. Once someone went on oxygen, we knew, hey, they had 3 to 4 years to live. So the conversations were, you know what, I've worked all my life. I did all this. I wish I could go to the grocery store for 20 minutes. And so for a year, I heard that. I'm like, there's got to be a way out of this. Like, there's hundreds of people like this. And so that's how I found, like, hey, here's wholesaling. Here's how you make money. Here's how you make $10,000 a month. Here's RJ. He's in Fort Worth. You know what? That's next to me. And it just began to grow like that.
But that was probably like brutal to have to sit there and like listen to those stories about like literally someone saying, I just want to go to the grocery store. I mean, that's probably just mentally like a beatdown. I talk about that like on the real estate investing side. Like, sometimes our seller calls can be like emotionally draining. Was that also like part of your like, dude, not only am I not making a lot of money, but I'm kind of miserable with the conversations?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was you hear the end of stories and you're like, man, they've worked 60, 70 years of their life at the same job. And this is like what they wish they could do, which, like you said, we have seller conversations like that, but obviously we give the solution. We're able to provide a solution to a seller, and we get compensated really well for it. But W-2 life was not for me.
Yeah. So yeah, the story I tell about like the emotional seller calls, I just had one during the past 50-day challenge, which I think I called you like 2 or 3 times during the lives where I'm like, hey, you're live on YouTube, but I got a lead in Greenville, so you're gonna help me. But one of the calls that I got that was just so emotionally draining is she actually lost her husband to a mass shooting. And I mean, dude, we know that they happen, right?
Mhm.
We hear about them on the news, but to actually have like that conversation, and then she eventually came out with it. The feeling that I had afterwards is like, dude, I need to take like 30, 40 minutes, like just emotionally like overcome what she was telling me about, hey, I need to sell my real estate because this is what happened and how emotionally distraught I am. Like I need to start my whole life over again. So it's just it's a tough part about our industry, right? So you get out of that industry talking to people like that. When did you make the decision, and how were you able to get out of that W? Because this is like a problem people have.
This is like so I was in medical device sales pretty much all of 2019. I was getting my stuff ready to go. I actually went into software sales for RealPage, which is a huge property management software company in Richardson. And I'd say like that defining moment, obviously as a man, you're like, all right, it's time to saddle up. Like we got to do this. So my wife and I, Amanda, we were having fertility issues, and yes, I'd made some decent money. It's like, okay, we're good, but it never was like, hey, this is like life-changing money, and it's not going to happen with me doing this W-2 job. But I went in to software sales, started doing really good. Obviously, it was like a long-term play, but I took that job in early 2019. I said, look, I'm gonna build this business up. Like I'd already done probably 20 wholesale deals, and I was like, I'm going to make a business of this. It's gonna be something we're gonna do. About mid 2019, we went to go to the fertility doctor, and they were like, "Hey, y'all been trying for almost a year and a half, 2 years. Y'all don't have anything happen. So here's your options." And of course, the options were astronomical. It's like, hey, $30,000, $40,000 for this, for maybe a 50-50 shot. And I remember walking down the hallway, and Amanda was just crying. She's like, I don't think we'll ever be able to afford this. We'll never be able to do this. I don't know what we do. And I remember looking at it and going, this is not the end. I was like, it's our starting line. Like, here we go. Let's do this. And I went on a madhouse, like just knocking down deals. Actually was the end of July or end of 2019. I'd done almost 5 deals a month. And I just was like, okay, we've got the runway. We've got everything going. I probably need to start looking at leaving my job. And that was the first goal, is like, hey, if I can be full-time in my job, I can go get the fertility treatments, all this other stuff. And I started getting ready to leave, got the insurance in line, everything. Well, a little thing called COVID came along. And it was about April, May. I locked up a deal as like a $35,000 assignment fee. And it hadn't closed yet. And Amanda's like, you need to quit. You need to quit. So the day after it closed was the same day that Dallas declared shelter in place. And I was like, I'm done. I'm out. Bye, y'all. And then like 2 hours later, they were like, hey, shelter in place. Everyone work from home. And I'm literally like, I know I just had this deal closed. I've had consistent deals. Um, I just left my job, and I'm like, what do we do? And we literally were like, I've done this many deals. I talked to my father-in-law, Billy, and he's like, look, you've already made the jump. I already had the heart to heart with my grandfather. And he was like, you've already done this. You've prepared it. You're not being stupid like me. He was like, jump, like do what you need to do and go build that business now. And we were able to get the fertility treatments like within the first 3 months of me leaving my corporate job. I made my annual salary in like the first 30 days after leaving my corporate job. And of course, Amanda was like, why didn't you leave sooner? I told you to leave sooner. But
Right.
that pivotal moment for us was whenever walking down the hallway and hearing it go like, I don't think we'll ever be able to afford this. And obviously now we have a 2-year-old that we adopted. So life is really different now.
Yeah, that's I wanted to talk about that. I'm glad that you brought up, because so often when we talk about being entrepreneurs, like we have our saying around here, create your own reality. And people talk about this freedom, financial freedom, and all these things. It's loosely thrown around, right? But in your scenario, like you're working a W-2 that you're miserable in, you know that you want to do this, hearing that, like, you realizing like, hey, I'm not able to actually have this freedom, and I'm not able to create my own reality. I have to go do this. Do you think if that hadn't happened, you might not have jumped off as quickly as you did? Do you think you would have stayed in the W-2 longer?
Oh yeah. I think honestly, so whenever I left my W-2, I just got a promotion and they said, "Hey, if you do exactly what you do, you hit your quota, your OTE on expectations." They were like, "You will make 130 to 150,000 this year." Which obviously like out here that's blood money. That's good money.
Right.
And I signed my commission statement. I said, "I'll be gone before summer." And I left May 2020.
Wow. So Amanda was always in favor of you quitting the W-2. You were
Yeah.
the reason why you weren't leaving.
It was always that false sense of security. It's you start looking at it and you're like, man, I don't think I can make that jump. And you should have that lack of confidence. Like, hey, how do I afford the insurance? And once I realized, like, hey, what's the problem? Let's go figure it out. Okay, that's the answer. Okay. Do you have 3 months runway? Yes, you do. Do you have 3 months savings? Great. Okay. Now it's just on you, buddy. Like, it's time to nut up. That's
Right.
it.
But like, dude, looking at you now, like when I called you during the 50-day challenge and I'm like, hey, I got some leads in Greenville, Texas. Your level of confidence in your abilities in your business and what you're doing is like second to none, in my opinion. Where did that come from? Is it just proof, like because you've been able to do it, or like because you're talking about like you needed this runway and like this like essentially proof that you could quit the W-2, and now here you are, fast forward, what are we, 3.5 years later, and like you're one of the most confident guys I know. So where did that come from?
I'll say it's kind of like a two-phase thing is like whenever you do your first wholesale deal, you go from, hey, is this a dreamland or is it belief land? And you go to belief land and you're like, okay, this is real. This is not some scam. But honestly, it's like your 50 deals in 50 states. It's repetition. It's going and doing those deals and getting in those conversations where it's like, hey, I don't know how to solve this problem, but I'll figure it out. And building that confidence up where I can go and talk to sellers that other investors pass up because they're like, I don't know how to do this deal, but I
Right.
do because I've done 20 or 30 of them.
So on that note, at what point in time did you decide, hey, I want to be the messy title guy? Because like this is like your thing, right? This is your niche. And like, why? Like, why? Who decides that?
So if our attorney's listening to this, I'm sure he will at some point. So whenever I was trying to get started in like it's late 2019, I was like, okay, where's my most profitable deals? And it was like, oh, messy title. And honestly, what it was is there was only a couple of title companies that I would work with because they worked with these types of deals. And I had like 2 or 3 deals. It was my proof of concept. Like, okay, 3 months, I'm good to go of runway. And I had like 3 or 4 deals, and the title officer was like, "Hey, look, we're gonna have to drop these deals. We can't find the sellers. You're just gonna have to let it go." And mind you, it was probably like 30, 40K worth of assignments there. And I go, "Not today." Okay. I called the attorney and I was like, "What do we need?" And I did this for those 3 deals. And I was like, "What do we need?" I know we've been working on it for 2.5 months here. In 18 hours, I cleared both or all of the titles on them. I went and found them, tracked down like the great aunts, went to the funeral. I was like, look, I know they just died, but I need to sign this paperwork. Whatever it took, because I was leaving that job no matter what. And I started realizing, hey, I didn't have to fight any other investors for this. I just had to fight the title officer and go find this person. That's it. So I realized, hey, that's my most profitable. I don't have to fight anybody for it. I just have to be really good at finding people and solving the title issues.
Yeah, but like to most investors, like what you just said is like, dude, it's also like the most time intensive deals.
Yeah.
And you're talking about you're quitting a W, like you needed proof to quit your W-2.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I'm going to go do the deals that take the longest to close. Like, I get it. You're finding people and you're getting, but like typically the messy title deals are the ones that end up being in escrow for like 6 months.
Yeah.
90-day closings where it's like, dude, we're out here, we're pumping stuff out in 14, 21 days. Like, wasn't that a concern for you?
Oh, 100%. So I'll tell you the reason behind that is, so I drove an hour and a half one way for work, hour and a half one way back. So 3 hours drive time. Okay. Then I'm working in the office for 8 hours. So I don't have enough time to go sit there. And this was before mass texting was really a thing. But I had to be really efficient for my 30 minutes during lunch or 45 minutes after work. So I knew, hey, if I didn't have to sit there and call 1,000 sellers, I only had to call 20 or 30, or let's say maybe 100. And so I was willing to discount that versus the time that I didn't have.
So it was more about the acquisitions. Like,
Yes.
you didn't have time for acquisitions. So you're like, if it takes me more time to clear up the title, that's okay, because at least I have 3 or 4 deals in escrow.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And my spreads were bigger, so I was willing to do it.
I see. That's pretty. So once you quit it, well, like once you're in it though, like,
oh yeah, then we go after whatever now.
Deals are messy title deals in comparison to like just a normal deal for you now.
So we went flip heavy in Q3, Q4. We were buying like 2 a week in Q3, Q4. Yeah, it was insane. Our officer was like, "Are you wholesaling any of these?" I was like, "Nope, we're buying them." I'd say so. 2023, we kind of shifted off to more buying because we raised a lot of private capital. And I would say probably 15, 20% were messy title. And then now we're getting back to, hey, we're about 60% is messy title.
And are you still taking everything down?
No.
Are you wholesaling?
No, I don't want more gray hairs.
So you did. So you listened to the Titanium Vault when you got started, and then apparently you stopped listening.
Yeah.
Because you haven't listened to me where I say, hey, don't take everything down, McKlane. Yeah. You didn't listen, man.
No. You fall into the flipper trap.
Yeah, that's what everything. What were you looking at? You were like, oh, I could make 20,000 if I assign this, but I could make 50,000 if I flip it.
Yeah, I was like, well, we got private money to burn here. We can do this.
Yeah, and then you walked away with 19,000, and you're like, I could have made more if I just wholesaled it.
Our last deal of 2023, it was literally net was like, I think it was $8,500 on a flip. And I go, no, we're not doing this. We're not doing this anymore.
It's like, no.
Back to the wholesale side.
Yeah, that's net if you're free.
Yeah.
Right? Your time, your effort, your energy, there's no expense of that. That's just, you get $8,500 for all of that. Yeah. It's a miserable existence. So when you're doing these messy title deals, because like I've had Logan Fulmer on here. So if you want to hear about crazy title, we literally went through his top 10 craziest messy title deals. And I mean, Logan is just
he's a whole other level than me.
So how difficult are these messy title deals? And is it mainly like just like probate situations, like tracking down affidavit airships, or like how messy are we talking?
So I call it, is it worth a squeeze? And I know Logan uses that phrase too, is how much is it worth my time? Because like now, okay, I can go sit on a deal for a year, 2 years, but how much are we going to make? Obviously, if it's something we have to wait on, like we had a deal that we waited 3 months because they didn't want to do probate. So they were like, hey, we'll wait 3 months to do affidavit airship. Perfectly fine. I'll sit on that all day long because we'll go make 40K on the flip. I'll do that. But I don't go after like the ones where it's 20 heirs and hey, it's title work from like 1905 or like 1920. We kind of hit our threshold of like, is it worth the squeeze if it's below a number amount? So like if it's under 30,000, it takes us 4 or 5 months. Okay, we'll probably do it. But if it's like 15 heirs, we're gonna make $2,500. Like, no, we cut that off. Right. I'm glad you found the messy title deal, but we're not gonna do it.
Love that. So let's talk about how you're finding these deals, because marketing is like, there's so many different shiny objects out there, right? Nowadays, we've got the paper lead models. You talked about mass texting back in the day. Curious if you're still doing any of that. Cold calling, list pulling, and all this. Listen, for everyone out there that's listening that thinks RJ only just pulls every record out there, I do niche down my data, okay? Don't hate me. Okay, I do a little bit of what McKlane does. We're bringing on REI Sift, all right? Yeah. So what are you doing as far as marketing, and how are you finding your deals?
REI Sift is at the core of our operations. I'm just going to say that. Okay. Yeah, so we run a
Shout out Tyler. We know you're listening.
Yeah, I got on here before him. So, but yeah, we run a pretty slim tech stack. We don't have like 20, 30 different systems. I'll give you kind of a rundown what we use: REI Sift, PropWire, PropStream, kind skip tracing, Sign Now. That's pretty much it.
That's it.
And we use smartphone for outbound cold calling. We don't do any mass text messaging. It's just the one-offs. Hey, missed your call, or if it's a very specific, which I'm sure Tyler will go into that. It's how we market to it. But we do mainly cold call, door knock. We don't do any mass mail. We do direct mail, but it's after a sequence of, hey, we've attempted to call them maybe 10, 15 times. And it's like, hey, I'm showing up at your door, which
Right.
I'm known for sending pizzas to people, and that really gets their attention. I'll give you kind of a story on it. It's like we had a deal where there was 8 heirs and we could not get the last guy. And I was like, look, this guy's, he's got to be there. And I was like, you know what, screw it. And it was up in Ohio. And I was like, look, where's the nearest Pizza Hut? And so I called the man, and I've done this, like, I don't do it too often, but I mean, enough times for me to know it. But I called him and I go, hey, look, I got a weird request. I'll give you like $15 on Venmo. I need you to write this message, my name, and be like, enjoy the pizza, give me a call. I sent like a pepperoni pizza, a chocolate cake, a Dr. Pepper, and I told the driver, I was like, tell me who picks it up, like who opens the door. And they were like, yeah, sure, we'll tell you that. And the guy like laughed. He's like, this is the best thing I've ever heard. I wish people do this all the time. So they drop it off, and he's like, yeah, it was this guy. He said the seller wasn't there, but he slammed the door, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Well, the next day, I get a call from the seller's ex-wife, and she's like, please help me. He's trying to beat me up. I'm like, who are you? What's going on? I delivered it to her ex's house, and the new husband thought that she was cheating on him. And she's like, honey, you about to get my ass beat. Like, you need to help me right now. And I go, okay, what's your name? And I found out, like, oh, she's the ex-wife. And he goes, are you cheating? Is she cheating on me with him? I was like, no, you're good, boy. Like, buddy, you're good.
Right.
Anyway, so she gives me her ex-husband's information because she had been talking to him. And she goes, here's where he is. He's been here for like last 6 months. He changed his number. Here's where he's at. If you need me, just use my number. But that's how we get a hold of like the really hard people, is we just send a pizza.
Oh my goodness. That is amazing, bro. That's one of the most creative ways of tracking down a seller I've ever heard of. And I love the fact that it's Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
I mean,
he used to work for Pizza.
Yeah, right. You had to include Pizza Hut into this. I would have loved that back in my Pizza Hut days. Like, if you called me, I would have been like, even as a manager, I'd been like, I'm delivering this. Like, I want to be a part of this, like operation over here. Like, yes. I'm going, bro. I will tell you their height, their weight, their hair color, their eye color. I will tell you everything.
In the contract, I'll get this done.
Yeah. Fuck it, bro. Let's do this. That's amazing. So, how many times have you done that?
Last year we did it 6 or 7 times. Yeah. By the time we get to that, it's like, oh man, like I'm hunting you down.
Does it ever not work?
Australia. I sent one to Australia, and the guy emailed me, and he said, "Thanks for the pizza, but I'm not signing." So funny thing is, it's cheaper to deliver a pizza in Australia than it is to do international mail. It was like,
really?
Yeah, it was like $37 to send him a little like normal letter. And then I called and I was like, hey, what's the conversion rate? And the guy's like, oh, it's like $17 plus the delivery. He's like, oh, it's $24. I was like, yeah, and plus I'll know today.
Right, exactly. You're not just waiting. So in those scenarios, what do you do if like someone won't sign? Is it dead? Or do you kind of go the path of what Logan does, where he starts like divvying it up and like buying percentages and all kinds of
Oh yeah. No, so knock on wood. We have like 100% ratio on everyone signing. I don't know if it's because I played the lost puppy. I'm like, hey, look, I'm just trying to help him, and this is what we got. And to this day, I have not had to pay anybody for their interest. Everyone's been cooperative. They're like, oh, I'm cool with what's going on. So knock on wood, we've had that perfect for the last 2 years. if we have someone that holds out, we normally just hold out. Like if it's a family matter, most times that's what it comes down to. It's a family matter. So then it goes down to, hey, what's our negotiation skills? What's our counseling skills is, hey, I know Joe Smith is mad at Susie. Like, who talks to Susie? Who talks to Joe? Okay, will you come help me? Because we're just trying to help them.
That's funny. So I think I had to look up where Greenville, Texas was when I met you. It's close to Dallas Fort Worth for those of you that don't know, but it's like not a happening. Yeah, it's not a happening place. Okay. So are you doing all of your deals in Greenville or have you expanded out?
So we're paying it out. So if it's a house nearby, I'll take it down myself. But we do cover like East Texas. So like think of 75 in Dallas all the way to Tyler, Longview area. And then we do some deals down in like Southwest Houston, South Houston. Yeah. Like I got to stay off the radar sometimes.
Yeah. All right.
But no, most of our focus has been local just because we've gotten such a good reputation for curing messy title that a lot of like the local realtors, investors, they're like, hey, here you go, McKlane, take this. And so we honestly don't have as much need to really focus on nationwide or, hey, let's go to another state. I mean, obviously it'd be cool to do that, but if the business is there and we're known for it as the years have gone on, like why kill it?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk. What does your business look like as far as personnel? Is it just you? Have you brought team members on? How lean are we keeping the business?
Yeah, no. I've gotten over that phase of like, oh, I can do everything myself. Like, no. I know I'm like half Vietnamese, but I'm not trying to do it all myself. No, we're good. So me, we got 2 acquisitions. We got executive admin. Been the best thing I've ever done. Any listeners are trying to hire their first VA, hire the executive admin. I'm telling you, like it will save your life. I do the dispo just because we have our VIP buyers, 2 cold callers overseas, and that's our acquisition. That's it. We do have the construction team got a project manager, so I'm not having to go there every day. That was like immediately once we hit 3 flips a month, I was like, yeah, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
But project manager, we got our normal contractor sub, so he handles all that, and that's pretty much it.
That's cool, man. So the team is expanding. I mean, where do you want to go from here as far as like, do you want to continue to grow the team? Do you like the size of the team? Because I mean, over the course of the past decade, Titanium has expanded and contracted like an accordion. So hopefully you don't follow the same path that I did, where you go all the way up to 74 and then decide, holy shit, life's terrible.
Yeah.
I contract back down to 2. So what does it look like for you? What size-wise of your team, where do you want to be?
So honestly, I'm happy around like that 5 to 7 mark. Obviously with Noah, our little baby, I love being able to skip out and be like, hey, I'm just gonna go home for the afternoon, or hey, I'm gonna go enjoy my time. Because like you said, there's the financial freedom, then you hit that part and you're like, where's my time freedom? Like, where do I get this at? So 5 to 7 is perfect. We do run a hybrid model. That way, if we need to go in the office, we can. If not, work from home, whatever it might be. But if anyone's listening, my goal for 2024, I'll say this is, I'm looking to raise a lot of money for syndications and debt funds. So, and as once you start knowing, like wholesaling is never just the only thing you're focusing on. You're going, hey, how do I use this to get to the next step? It's like flipping a house. You're going to get something distressed, fix it up, sell it, make more money, go on to the next deal. So for me, wholesaling is not my only thing. It's going to raise more private capital, going to go on those bigger deals, eventually going into debt funds, raising millions of dollars to go buy other assets, even if it's not real estate.
So what kind of assets are we talking about? What is it multifamily? Where are we headed?
More along like the businesses, and obviously it's going to be more of the I've always had a thing for affordable housing. That's actually what my specialty was whenever I was in software sales. It was affordable housing for the Northeast sector of the United States. And listening to those operators talk, and they're like, oh yeah, we just do a cost segregation, plus we get our tax credits here and this. And I'm like, they're taking like millions of dollars of credits and they haven't done anything to the property, and they're just leaving it like this. And then I would talk to like the West Coast, talk to the California multifamily operators, and they were like, "Oh man, we got to do this A class. We're squeezing out every dollar we can just to get conventional rent rates." So that's kind of been my thing, is venture out into affordable housing on a bigger scale. Development is obviously the play for us. And then also looking for those businesses where it's the mom and pop. It's the, hey, how can we build this operation up that has no SOPs? It's literally in grandpa's head and he's got Alzheimer's kind of thing. So
you're a Cody Sanchez fan nowadays?
No. I'm an RJ Bates fan, sir.
Oh, okay. There you go. So on that note about affordable housing, this is a hot topic on Pardon the Disruption. Me and Chris Jefferson, we argue about this a lot. CJ is very passionate about affordable housing. I think he actually sits on the board of a charity, a nonprofit organization in Richmond, Virginia, dedicated to affordable housing. So what do you think as real estate investors we can do to help create more affordable housing? Because, like, listen, I get a lot of heat with some of the reels that I've been putting out about hedge funds are not the enemies. Everyone wants to blame hedge funds. Everyone wants to blame us as investors. We're the reason why house prices have continued to increase. It has nothing to do with inflation or the cost of materials or anything else. It's all us, bro. We're the enemies. So what can we do to change that narrative to fix and actually allow there to be affordable housing?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's number one is the stigma is, yes, you do have your bad tenants on Section 8, HUD vouchers, things like that, but you also have horrible tenants on conventional side. So number one is getting rid of the stigma. If any one of your listeners is thinking about getting into affordable housing, call your local housing authority, even if it's in your local town. So like out here where I live in Greenville, if I call them right now, they are 24 to 26 months behind on housing. So the clientele is there. It's just a matter of, is there an investor that's willing to accept a voucher? And that's the hardest part whenever you talk to a Section 8 or a HUD voucher person. Like, they will tell you the amount of investors that have told them, I'm not taking your voucher. Which, granted, obviously you run your background checks, you do everything you need to, but there's that stigma that they will not take it, even with the regulations of, hey, you have to at least accept the application. And
but why? This is what I don't understand.
It's a stigma.
It's guaranteed money.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, my opinion, if you go through an eviction, it's miserable.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to have to go through that. And also like the rules and regulations that they put down on the tenant themselves were like, they can't tear your place up.
Yeah.
Like, because then they'll lose the voucher forever. So it's like, hey, dude, you rent out a house for $1,200 to random Joe Blow that's just giving you $1,200 cash. They have no rules and regulations. They can tear your place up. Nothing happens to them long term. So to me, it's always been a safer route. I don't understand the stigma, to be honest with you. How many rental properties do you have right now?
We got 8.
So how many of those are Section 8?
3.
Okay. Do you like the 3 or the 5?
Honestly, I like that the housing authority threatens them if they miss by day 4.
Right.
But like, I'll tell you, it's some of the cleanest houses. Like, okay, that's another thing that investors can do is, if you have a decent product, because a lot of people think, oh, it's Section 8. Like, yes, you do have your inspections, but you're held to that higher standard of, hey, does this window work? Is it closed? Do you have safety alarms? Do you have the keyless locks? Like, there's a higher standard there once you get into it. It's not, oh, hey, it's a Section 8 house, it's horrible. It's, hey, is this a decent house? Because most of these people have had to put up with these investor houses that barely pass inspection. They're not going to take care of that house. But whenever they move to yours, they're so appreciative. Like, we have an older lady in one of ours, RJ, she was living in like a 1-bedroom apartment and she hated it. She's like, oh, everyone's getting shot up in here. And she was like, I just need to move in this house. She's like, I have a voucher for a 2-bedroom. If you'll keep it a 2-bedroom, I will move in. It's a block away from my daughter. And she is maintained the property almost better than our owner finance people.
Yeah. It's crazy. That's what I'm saying. It can be a better situation for the landlord. And you're talking about 24 to 26 months behind on inventory. It's insane. I mean, I don't see any reason why more investors are not accepting this and moving away from this stigma, because I think it's better for them long term. So you talked about seller finance. Dude, you're doing everything.
Yeah.
You did listen to Titanium Vault back in the day. You're literally following in my footsteps right here. Wholesale, and then all of a sudden you start flipping.
Wraps, sub 2.
So now you got wraps. So are the wraps sub 2 wraps? Are you taking them and then refinancing them and wrapping them? How are you doing that?
Both.
Both. You do everything, bro.
So I hope I trademark this one day. It's we were doing reverse burrs. So I'm gonna say reverse burrs. Okay, so everyone knows traditional burrs, where it's hey, buy, refi or fix it up, refinance, all that stuff. Okay.
Right.
So what we were doing was it before the interest rate hikes? I knew it was coming, and I was like, there's going to be a point where the seasoning period gets taken up, and you go from hey, I can do a cash out refinance with no seasoning to 6 months, 12 months. Okay, now it's like we're not doing cash out refinance last year. So I knew ahead of time, hey, this is probably going to happen. Let's catch it ahead of time. So we were buying properties to eventually wrap them after we refinance them. What we would do is raise the private capital, go in the property, because remember, I knew my cost with my project manager. I knew my cost. So we would go in and take our project management fee on the front end, 10, 15,000, whatever the assignment would have been, go rehab it, do a rate and term refinance because there's no seasoning on rate and term refinance. And plus we weren't taking any money out, so our interest rates weren't higher. And then all we did is either rent it out or I did a wraparound refinance or wraparound mortgage on it. But whenever all these investors in, was it Q2, Q3, Q4, were like, oh man, interest rates are horrible. We can't get our money out. We just fixed up this house. We're trying to cash out refi. I was sitting here like, should have read the fine print, guys.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
So yeah, reverse burr.
So yeah, you're gonna term that? Is that gonna be the
that's gonna be my term. I've only said it at like 2 conferences, and the guys that do burrs were like, whoa, what did he just say?
Is that the McKlane method? Like the
I'm gonna call it the McKlane method.
Like Pace has the Morby method. I just did a reaction video to Pace closing a deal, and he literally pauses and he goes, "This is I coined this term. I created this. It's called the Morby method." And I'm like, Pace, I love you, bro, but you did not create this, okay? And so, McKlane, I hate to burst your bubble, but you're not the only bird. You did not create this. You might have created it in your head.
Yeah.
But other people did it before you. So you didn't create it.
They don't talk about it.
They didn't talk about it.
That's a difference. They don't talk about it.
Yeah, you're like, they did not brand it the McKlane method, though, and I am. So I love it. So let's talk about the fact you brought up what you and Amanda went through, and it just to get on the personal side of things away from the business. I mean, I watched your journey, from afar on social media. That was a roller coaster of a ride there, from the fertility treatments and everything, eventually leading to Noah. I mean, talk about that to the people that might be going through a similar situation, and what's something you learned about it, and how did y'all make it through that? Because that had to have been a terribly difficult time.
Yeah, and I know obviously I'm gonna have some listeners that like tune in this. I'm very big in like the REI SIF community. I'll kind of set the stage here. I've been very big in like the REI SIF community, obviously DFW. And whenever I first started telling our story, I had a lot of people that come up to me at events. They're like, thank you for telling your story. Cause like we're going through it right now. We're like, we've been there and no one talked about it. I'm getting chills for right now. So, but no, I'll tell you this, is fertility is the hardest thing that anyone can go through. And if anyone's going through it, there are other people going through, but you've got to know when to raise your hand and say like, hey, I need help. For me personally, like I will never go through the stuff that Amanda went through, where she had to take like hundreds of shots every day, or 7 or 8 shots a day. And I'm just standing there like, okay, what's the next one we got to do? What's the next vial? Okay. And the bruising, the emotional drama that comes with it, it's almost like a PTSD, because you're left with either a baby or you're not. And you're like, I did all this work and I don't have anything. So obviously Amanda has that scarring still from that trauma, that event. So like whenever we talk about it, yes, now we're to a point where like, hey, that was our journey. This is where we came from and we understand it. And this is what we did to get through it. And then as a husband, like for me, it was the financial factor, obviously. And I kind of tell people whenever I talk to them, I go, it's a relay. Is you're running your part of the relay as a husband, providing that financial ability that you wouldn't have had if you're trying to get out your W-2, if you're trying to build your business, if you're trying to get the money. You as a husband or sole provider, whoever it is, you're doing the first part. And then once you hand it off to your spouse, your wife, whoever it might be, that's a whole nother battle in itself. And so emotionally, both of us went through our own races, if you will. And I'll never understand the emotions she went through. She'll never understand the emotions I went through. But whenever I talk to other people, they're like, I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you addressed that, because people don't talk about that. And that's the hardest thing, is saying, hey, I need help.
Dude, a lot of men don't want to talk about a lot of things on these types of topics. So I'll share my version of the story. It's in the same realm. It's not on fertility. But I did lose a child to a miscarriage, and that's why I have the beard. No one, I've never really shared that before, or if I have, I don't remember doing it. But going through the process of going in for the sonogram and there not being a heartbeat, and then having to go back to the hospital, and that was a child for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember sitting in the hotel lobby and feeling so helpless as a man that there was nothing that I could do. And I didn't understand. It was like, why did I have to go through this? Right. And I needed some sort of emotional release. And for whatever reason, I made the decision, I'm going to grow a big beard and I'm going to keep it for the rest of my life. And it'll always be my memory of the child that I lost. And I found a way to cope with the emotional pain one way or another. There's still moments that I think back about it, and it still gets to me, where it's like, I have 2 beautiful kids. Should I have 3? Would I even have serenity if that baby had been born? Would it have been serenity? We don't know. I don't understand how things work, So going through that, when it happened, I found out that so many other dads had gone through this, but we don't talk about it.
Yep.
Why? Because we're men and we're stubborn. We just feel like we can't talk about emotions and what that does to us. And it's not the case. Like, it's okay to talk about it. And that's the thing I loved about you sharing yours and Amanda's journey, was it's like, dude, I was riding the roller coaster with y'all. Like, I remember when it was like, hey, we're starting. And then at one point in time, you thought it was successful, right?
Yeah.
And then it wasn't. And it was like, I remember how heartbroken I was for you guys when y'all made that announcement. Talk about Noah and how that came about and what that experience has been like.
Oh, man, that's like a miracle in itself. I'll tell you this real quick, because I know Tyler's coming on your next one, and I hope it gets to him before he listens to this one. But I got the call from Amanda whenever we did our first IVF transfer, and I was at the REI SIFT event in Florida, and I remember she texted me and she said, "Hey, it's positive." And Crystal Frangos and Stephanie Shepard were in the back room with me, and we were getting donuts, and I was like, oh my, I was like, guys, I was like, it worked. I was like, it finally worked. And they both were like, what? They're like, everyone knew my story that was there. And they were like, oh my word, like, can we say that? I was like, no, guys, just hold on. But also, like you said, is that moment would have never gotten there had I never left my W-2. So with that being said, like, those are those pivotal moments there.
Yeah.
But Noah has been, probably her whole story is honestly a blessing in itself. And I'll tell kind of the highlight here before I go into it is, whenever we did her baby dedication at church, our Amanda and then like the youth pastor, they did the math. So the day we did our last IVF transfer would have been almost to the day her same time that she would have been conceived. And so whenever we adopted her was exactly 9 months that we'd had her. So it was as if we carried her physically, like as a
Right.
fetus. But no, so we'd lost our last embryo probably the end of 2022. And we were like, hey, this is our second, third attempt here. Like I'm getting frustrated. Obviously, it's already cost a couple $1,000. And I was frustrated. I was like, look, I don't want to keep seeing you go through the emotions, the amount of shots. We had boxes, like boxes of just needles and syringes. And I was like, look, I'm willing to take a break if you are. And maybe like 3 weeks later, we were like, hey, because both my parents were adopted, and we've always thought, let's go ahead and let's start doing the adoption process. So it's always been on our radar. But like 3 weeks later, probably January 20, was it 22, 20, sorry, January 23, we got a call. We're like, hey, there's a newborn baby. This family has her. Do y'all want to come meet her? And they were like, no promises. We know y'all aren't certified yet to be foster parents. We just want you to come introduce yourself to the baby. No promises. But this lady that has her has a historical record of every baby she gets adopted, because the father, like, I don't know if you know the foster system. It is a freaking circus, and it takes years for people to adopt a kid. And we went through 3 different agencies, and they were like, oh, you want to adopt a newborn? It's not going to happen. You're going to be waiting 4 or 5 years. Just say your prayers and let it go. Like, it ain't going to happen. So we got our licensing. And then 3 months later, we had Noah, which her name was different at the time. We had her in our placement ready for adoption within 3 months. Like, everything was the T. The lawyers were like, this is a miracle. I don't know how y'all did this. The fostering agency out of McKinney was like, we have done thousands of fostering and adoptions, and we have never seen this happen, even with this family that we know is an anomaly. And everything was just a blood, like it was to a T. Like, hey, her original name, it was Amanda's middle name. Her original name, she was like, that was meant to be. Okay. Noah was actually a twin. Unfortunately, the other one didn't make it. But the day she was born, it was like, this was all coinciding with other events in our lives. Like, this is when we did the transfer. This is whenever we had a miscarriage. This is whenever, like, it was blessed. And the whole way through we knew it was like meant to be, but the foster agency, they were like, I don't know what you have in your background. I don't know who is in your corner, but none of this should have happened. Like, none of it should have happened. And it's been amazing. I'll say, as a father, it's definitely calmed me down to where I'm like, I'm not here to do the business to make money. I'm here to enjoy this. This is my life that I want now. Obviously, that's why I've like, hey, let's hire an executive admin. Let's hire a project manager. How do I spend more time with my kiddo? That's like my number one goal now is, how do I spend more time with my kiddo? And now it's like, what's my legacy look like for them? What does that reality? Because like, I'm going more in depth here, and like, if the waterworks kick on, like, I'm sorry, but like, I make the joke, my dad literally came over on a boat from Vietnam. Like, there's CBS videos where it's the boat that he was on came to Houston, and he went to Buckner Orphanage in Dallas. Like, both my parents did not come to the US for me to play small. Right. And then I can only think, like, what's Noah's generation going to look like? What can I build for her or put her in a position to go, this is your legacy here. We could be somewhere in Vietnam or somewhere in Mexico, and you'd never have the opportunities you have here. So I'm really grateful for those opportunities like that. And I know it's a whole nother conversation, but the gratitude that I have from that is a very big driving factor for like, what can I do before I leave this earth?
Yeah. Well, and becoming a dad changes a lot of that too, right?
Yeah.
You're playing a much different game when you come home every night and you're looking at your little one and you're like, when the years start evaporating, like for me, I've got an 11-year-old and a 6-year-old. I mean, it's like, dude, we got 7 years before he's 18 and he's out. It's like, dude, we got to start playing the game faster over here.
Yeah.
Like more has to happen faster because that time is evaporating. And we talk about we do it for the legacy and all that, but it's like, what does that actually mean? Is it written down? Is it plain? Do you know what you're trying to accomplish? Because if it isn't, then you're playing an endless game where there's never the accomplishment. And that's been a big change for me over the past couple of years, is actually understanding what that plan looks like. Now, on that note, you guys, I believe, have set a record. How many times have y'all gone to Disney?
RJ, hold on. I'm at the home office. Hold on. Yeah.
Yep. There it all is. Look at those Mickey ears. Mini ears. Sorry.
Yeah.
Mini ears.
So we've been 2 times a year for the last 3 years.
So you've been 6
times total.
And Amanda has won all of those.
No, she's won. No, she won the first one, and then after that, she's like, I'm going the next 2. Like, I'll pay for it out of my sales, and we're going. And I'm like, please no.
Because she sells Cincy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I was about to ask, like, how many damn balls of wax is she selling over there for y'all to keep going to Disney?
That's a whole nother room. That's the whole nother room. I'll tell this. If there's any listeners, I'm just saying, go get the disability pass and you'll like skip every line. That's the best.
Oh my God. No, you didn't, bro.
Yeah. So it only took us 3 years to realize that is once you have that, you are gold. Like every ride takes 15, 20 minutes. You're good to go.
Oh my goodness. Listen, here, all I'm saying is that people call me the king closer, but in reality, Amanda is the queen closer. Okay, because of how much Cincy she sells. She has to sell that much for y'all to keep going to Disney. Do you go only to Disney or do you do Universal?
Bro, only Disney.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, bro, Universal is better.
I know, but like I don't ride the rides. Amanda loves the rides, and then so
What?
I'm stuck as the Noah carrier because she can't go on all the rides.
Why don't you ride the rides?
PTSD from my childhood.
Oh my God, bro! Come on.
No,
I'm not big on roller coasters either, but dude, you have to ride some of them.
Yeah, I rode all of them this last time, so we're good. It only took me 3 years to ride all of them, but yeah.
Jeez. And bro, we're talking about Disney. These are like children rides.
Hey. I was like 4 whenever I got introed to a roller coaster that went upside down.
What, the Shockwave?
Yeah. It's like a runaway. No, it was Runaway Mountain.
Oh, bro, and you were 4?
Yeah.
Dude, that's savage. My parents, my dad put me on the Shockwave when I was like 5 or 6.
Oh,
so
right.
I'm scared of roller coasters.
Yeah.
If you don't know what the Shockwave is because you're not from Dallas-Fort Worth, look it up. It's the one that's right by Cowboy Stadium. It's a double loop. It's scary. If you're 5 or 6 years old, you don't want to be on the Shockwave. That's all I'm saying. So, McKlane, man, what an honor to have you on the Titanium Vault. Seriously, I think the only reason why I waited this long to have you on is just because I was going to be kind of sad the day that we finally did it. Like, I'm actually like sad that now my McKlane interview, like, you were like one of the interviews that I wanted to do that's like, I'm running out of interviews I want to do. So it's like, honestly, bro, you're kind of on like my Mount Rushmore of interviews to have just because it's such a cool story, man. I mean, you truly were listening to the podcast early on. And like, let's not be confused about this. It was not purely RJ's content that you were listening to. It was the Daniel Moores, the Jason McDougals, the Nicole Espinosas, like the people that we had back in the day early on. Those are the interviews.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember or not, man, but there used to be somewhat of a script to the Titanium Vault. Do you remember it? It was, who are you? What do you do? How do you do it? And why? That was the original script to the Titanium Vault. I've actually figured out how to interview people after 6.5 years, so I don't have to follow the script anymore. But, dude, what a cool story. And just across the board, man, congratulations on everything that you've accomplished. You should be just so proud of yourself, man. Again, another thing that men don't say to each other, that, hey, you should be proud of yourself. Because not only did you find a way to leave the W-2 and go create your own reality and do all of that, you literally did it unlike anybody else. Like, you went out and you did it with the messy title. You did it with niche lists. You didn't go out and say, hey, I'm just going to pull the high absentee or high equity absentee list, mass cold call. If I get deals, I get deals. Like, no, dude, you went out and you figured it out. You looked at your analytics. You said, this is where I'm making the most money, and I'm going to make this work. And you found a way to make yourself a beautiful life and a beautiful family over there. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today, man.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having the podcast.
Absolutely. All right, guys. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you like the video. If you're listening, give us a 5-star review. And just because it's McKlane's episode, we have to end it the way that I love ending it, okay? Because McKlane said it's the best podcast out there. You have to leave us a 5-star review. If you didn't like it for whatever reason, maybe it's because you don't like McKlane, you don't like Disney, you wish you went to Universal or something like that, go to Steve Train's Real Estate Disruptors, okay? And leave him a 3-star review and say, RJ said to leave you a 3-star review because I didn't like his podcast. Otherwise, don't leave me a review at all. All right, that's all I got for you guys. We appreciate you, McKlane. You're a rock star, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.